where, wherever a Canadian is stationed, they're going, darn it, I want to be part of National Canadian Film Day. And so that started to explode. So now we're like at, you know, over 2,000 screenings in Canada and all around the world.
Colm, thank you so much for the time. This is great. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you again about National Canada Film Day.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for being interested in it.
Honestly, this is something that my interest genuinely has grown. Like, this is one of those things, I think this is the 12th year, is it? Or is
Oh,
it more
yeah.
than that?
It's, yeah, no, I
12th
think it's
year.
at least 12. Yeah.
I think
We
I
had our
think
10th
I
anniversary a couple of years ago. So, yes, must be 12. That
well, I
makes sense.
think the first time I heard of it was the eighth year. That was the first time I was even aware of it. And each year, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
well, we got a little bit more attention because um, on the 10th, I think it was the 10th, we went to Rideau Hall, and the Governor General invited us there to show a couple of different films to two different audiences, one Francophone, one Anglophone, and we kind of made our point. People just went, "Oh, wow, these are our stories. This is amazing. This is exactly what you should be talking about at least once a year."
Yeah, at least is a good way to say it, but at least, no, not to repeat, but at least we have this day to
Yeah.
really shine the spotlight on Canadian film, which is just an incredible thing. How have you seen it evolve over the years?
Well, we've certainly expanded with screenings. People have heard about it. It's branched out across the world, and now, we were thinking, well, we'll do libraries. We'll get a couple of, great distributors and promoters, and maybe some broadcasters to help us. Maybe some libraries, maybe some old folks' homes. But then suddenly we're on military bases all over the world, where, wherever a Canadian is stationed, they're going, darn it, I want to be part of National Canadian Film Day. And so that started to explode. So now we're like at, you know, over 2,000 screenings in Canada and all around the world, which is overwhelming when you think about it, because it's a huge thing to organize. But our team is particularly proficient. They're actually good at this. It's not their first time at it. And, we've learned the lessons of getting out to people and also getting folks interested in participating and helping us. And the fact that so many people have been so willing to help us has been enormously gratifying because we are kind of everywhere on every platform, all day.
This is what I think truly makes it special. Is not only is it about celebrating our film and our cinema, but it really is everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And it isn't hard to get involved. Like, you don't have to go down to the theater. You can, but you don't
Yeah.
have to. What can you talk about this, about how that has changed
Well, I think
the
this is a
idea?
response to, you know, our teams recognizing that some people are not going to be take themselves to the cinema or to the library or the old folks home or to the local military setup. They're going to stay at home and open their computer. Well, what if we could just say, "Oh, it's there for you too. It's on your phone. It's wherever you want to be." I mean, I always joke, I don't think anybody's ever going to be watching Chinatown on their phone. Now there's lots of people watching Chinatown on their phone. And I just got it so horribly wrong, but that's not new. But the fact of the matter is, because we've managed to open up, branch out to all these different platforms, we've got a much bigger audience because people think, hey, I can access that. I can get on that. And particularly younger people. And that to me is enormously inspiring because they're the ones we want to encourage to know that here in Canada, we can make our stories, tell our stories, and people will listen to our stories. And you can't buy that. And in fact, you really can't buy that. And most of the time, we're making it for free, right? And we're begging everybody to put it on for free. And we're begging the government to give us throw us a bone and throw us a little money so we can make it more or less for free. But when it's finally seen and people recognize the impact of our stories, it changes everything.
It is true. It is true. And I would love to ask you, you talk about our stories. I heard Don McKellar once in an interview. I actually was at TIFF.
Uh-huh.
And actually, I got to ask him about the Canadian voice. And I know we've talked about Canadian film before, but his answer I wanted to ask you about because it was fascinating. He said, I don't think so much of there being a Canadian voice as I do a Toronto voice, or a Maritime voice, or a Vancouver voice, or a Montreal voice. And I was wondering what you thought about that idea.
Well, Don would know because he's been around and he's done it all, and he would be sensitive to that. I think partly because he's a particular Toronto voice.
Mm,
So he wouldn't want to be claiming anything nationally and saying a blanket statement, this is all Canadian. Because I'm just an actor and not a writer, director, producer, actor like he is, uh, I tend to be more flexible. That is to say, for me, everything falls under the arch of Canadian cinema, Canadian stories. And yes, some are going to be way more regionally specific and require a more regionally specific view, but then they only benefit from that, right? That doesn't disqualify them. To me, that actually makes them more interesting. Maybe harder to get the money for them, but more interesting in the scheme of things. Harder for me to get a job in them because I'm not able to pretend to be, you know, I may not be able to fool anybody to think I'm from the hinterlands of Newfoundland or Labrador and BC, etc. But the bottom line is those things exist, and they still speak, I think, universally to a Canadian audience because we're all here on this great swath from sea to sea to sea, and we share a certain view of the world
mm.
most of the time. And I think that view of the world is pretty much always reinforced by the kinds of movies and stories we tell, because it's about isolation, difficulty, suffering, resilience, getting through and blah, 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 and facing untold challenges and managing. And we get that. We shovel snow. It's April. It snowed here yesterday. I'm in southwestern Ontario for crying out loud. And so I think that although I think Don's right, there are specific voices, we still have an overarching universality that is Canadian, as distinct from being American. Nothing against that, but as distinct from that.
I love that. I love that. And I think that that's a great Canadian perspective. We are different, but we are different in amongst our differences at the same time. It's sort of
Yeah.
holding those things in tension. In that spirit, I would love to ask you, the theme this year is Let's Dream Together. What was the thinking behind that, and what does it mean to you?
Well, obviously, the world is in a fairly parlous state at the moment. There are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of difficulties, there's been a lot of conflict and a lot of reluctance to collaborate, get along, all of that kind of stuff. And so we're looking at something way more hopeful, way more suggestive of a brighter future, and one that is perhaps aspirational, but that we can move toward very actively, right? We're going to tell those kind of stories. We're going to try and get there. And so that was part of it. And also gave us an opportunity to have a moose jump over the moon. Now that we've just had a Canadian go round it, we wanted a moose jumping over it, right?
I love that. That's fantastic. Um, talking about making things better, this year there's the special focus on the legacy of Graham Greene.
Mm,
And I believe that he was one of those actors who genuinely made things better
yep.
just by being in them. And what in your mind is the legacy of Graham Greene mean to you?
Oh, well, Graham, I worked with Graham. I knew Graham. He was a neighbor. He lived right around the corner from me because he came to Stratford.
Mm.
to do Merchant of Venice. And then went, well, this is nice. I think I'll move here. And so he and his wife moved here and never left. And then we've done some film together. He was supposed to do another film, a television show that I was doing, but alas, he passed before he could. But he has a huge impact by virtue of the fact that he was willing to keep showing up, right? He just said yes
Mm.
over and over and over again. And this with an enormous amount of wit, a great sense of humor, a truckload of irony. But he's a funny guy. He is dry, funny, and everything you see of him on screen. But he was willing to lend those talents and skills to young filmmakers, to novices, to all kinds of people. Say, yeah, yeah, I've been very, very lucky. I've had my Oscar noms. I've had this. I've had plenty of work. It's time for me to help out. I'll be there. Sure. What time? And he was. And so I take a page out of his book and try to do precisely the same thing. If anybody asks me, I'm likely to say, what would Graham Greene do? He would say yes, and he would show up.
That tracks. I didn't know him, but that tracks with everything I've heard about him, is that he
Yeah.
was just this earnest gentleman who was always willing to give. And I
But also funny.
and
I
very
mean,
funny. Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
I could tell that anytime you see him in a film, he just had this dry sense of humor.
There's a glint in his eye,
Yes,
where he goes, yeah, okay.
it's
That's the way
true.
if that's the way you want to act that, you go ahead, knock yourself out. You know, I'd be embarrassed to try playing opposite him.
Honestly, Colm, I could not be more excited for this year, and it continues uh, continues to grow. I love that it's a global event. That excites me. It is truly a global event now,
What do you think
and
is the actual biggest film festival in the world?
really,
Yeah, I think so. We got over 2,000 screenings all around the world. And obviously a lot of them in Canada. But if you think about it that way,
mm,
the impact is ridiculously impressive.
yeah, it really is. It really is. Here it is again, April 15th, 2026, and Colm Feore. Colm, thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your interest.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Cheers.
Bye bye.